Dig deep into your closet and pull out those khaki pants because Jim Harbaugh is back. Michigan opens up the Big Ten season against Rutgers at the Big House this Saturday. But could this Michigan-Rutgers matchup look more like 2021 than 2022?
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
The 3-game suspension is over for Jim Harbaugh. He's going to be back roaming the sidelines, and life couldn't be better. I'm excited to have Jimmy H back on the sideline. Now, it's no secret. Michigan hasn't been maybe as utterly dominant as we expected them to be right out of the gate. I think with this non-conference schedule all at home, East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green, one of the weaker, if not the weakest non-conference schedule in the Power 5. I think we expected them to just lay it on them, completely dominate as this being one of the best teams in college football this season against inferior opponents. But it hasn't happened. They haven't looked as dominant, I think, as we all expected them to be. What is the reason for that? Is it the shuffling of head coaches? With the Jim Harbaugh suspension, has it been maybe Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, who both had injuries last season, both kind of trying to get back to 100%? Is it seeing this offensive line trying to gel together with a couple of new pieces on it? Whatever it is, the fact of the matter is Michigan and the Maize and Blue just haven't been as dominant as we expected them to be. And now you face Rutgers at home in a noon game. This is a Rutgers team that I think is going to give Michigan some challenges that the non-conference schedule did not. This is still a superior, talented Michigan team, but don't sleep on Rutgers keeping this close for a while. Let's talk about Rutgers, man. I'm getting injured just thinking about Rutgers, just watching Rutgers. I think I suffered multiple injuries because they bring the pain on defense. Everything that they do looks painful. Everything they do looks like it hurts. They tackle strong and they hit hard. This is a Greg Schiano football team. I think for these first few years that Greg has been the head coach over there, he's trying to mold this team into his style. Physical, hard-nosed, blue-collar, kind of a lot like what's going to be on the other side of the ball this Saturday in Michigan. And I think he finally has a team that he can point at and say, that's my team. That's how I want to play the game of football. This Rutgers-Michigan game this Saturday could be one of the most physical games that we see all season long. I just love watching Rutgers play defense. I love watching them attack the football and flow to the football and hit the way they do in this game. It is a collision every time they come to the line of scrimmage and make a tackle, and even in the open field as well. So let's talk about the matchup here. Michigan's offense against Rutgers' defense. I'm very interested specifically in the matchup in the secondary. Okay, we know JJ McCarthy is a great quarterback. Now, I know he had those 3 cringeworthy interceptions against Bowling Green, and that can't happen because this Rutgers secondary is a decent secondary. Max Melton, Robert Longerbeam, I think Flip Dixon, the transfer from Minnesota, has come in, and he's become a really big part of this defense. This Michigan offensive line, they are going to need to keep Aaron Lewis and others out of the backfield. If they get in the backfield a lot against JJ McCarthy, we'll see. We saw this last Saturday. We saw this last game throwing interceptions, and you got to think Rutgers is going to take a look at that and says, we got to try to do that. We got to try to get JJ McCarthy into uncomfortable situations because we've seen it these first couple of games where if JJ, and we've seen it beforehand going back to last season, if JJ is able to sit back there and get comfortable and throw the football, he's going to carve you up. He's going to carve you up no matter how good your secondary is. The matchups between these Rutgers defensive backs and the Michigan wide receivers is also going to be interesting with the Roman Wilsons, the Cornelius Johnsons, the Tyler Morrises of the world. I think there's a lot of good talent on the outside here for Michigan. That's going to be a fun matchup to watch. What happens if Rutgers is able to cover well? What happens if the Scarlet Knights are able to stay in the hip pocket of some of these wide receivers most of the afternoon? Does Michigan then go back to the run game with Blake Corum and with Donovan Edwards? It's the trenches. Michigan, as good and as tough as Rutgers has appeared so far, Michigan is just the superior team in the trenches. Their offensive line, even though some people have said it doesn't quite look like the Joel Moore award-winning offensive lines of the last few seasons, it's still a good offensive line. It's still a great offensive line. And we'll see if Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards really get going and really have that explosion. I don't know if this is the game. I'm not sure. Just because of what I said earlier. Rutgers comes up, they flow to the football, their linebackers are great. Mohamed Toure, Deion Jennings, and others in that linebacking group do a great job of stalking out the run game and flowing to the ball. Now, the run games of Temple and Virginia Tech are something, and then there's the run game, and tackling those huge thighs of Blake Corum is a totally different ball game. So it's going to be a fun matchup to really see how those things really go together. For Rutgers, we know their offense isn't great. We know they don't have a ton of playmakers on the outside. Their offense is predicated on their ability to run the football with Kyle Monangai. Kyle Monangai is one of the best running backs in the Big Ten throughout the first 3 games of this season, put up a lot of yards. He's gotten into the end zone a lot here so far this season. And this Rutgers offensive line is going to have to try to find a way to move this one of the best defensive lines in the country in Michigan. Because if they can't run the ball with Kyle Monangai and you put the ball into the hands of Gavin Wimsatt to try to make a play, I don't think it's going to go that well. Even though Gavin has looked more confident, he's looked better. It's just in a lot of these games, he's going 50-50 in terms of completions and incompletions. His completion percentage is not great. He's not an efficient quarterback. I really think Rutgers is at their best when they're able to pound the ball and even mix in some quarterback run game outside of that as well. And then Gavin Wimsatt can make some plays in the pass game going down the field. But you can't put too much pressure on Gavin. In these games that Rutgers plays this season, if a team sells out on the run and bottles up the Rutgers run game and forces Gavin to make plays, they're probably going to have success. Because I don't know if there's a bunch of receivers on the outside for Rutgers that can make a whole lot of plays against this really good secondary of Michigan. Michigan is stout, of course we know that, on all 3 levels of this defense. Like that defensive line for Michigan, Mason Graham, Chris Jenkins, they're as good as it gets on the interior. Rutgers is going to have a challenge up front. Rutgers almost might be better at trying to neutralize those guys and try to get to the outside. Even though their strength in the run game is in the interior, is inside the guards. I just think they're going to have to find another way to run the football because there's a big advantage up front in that defensive line for Michigan in this game. I want to see JJ McCarthy respond after those interceptions that I mentioned against Bowling Green. I want to see him get in a rhythm. I want to see him get confident against a good defense in Rutgers. This one would not surprise me if this is a closer game in the first half and then Michigan pulls away in the second half. But this is, I don't know if I'd consider, this is not a big challenge, but it is certainly a step up. And I think we're going to find out a lot about Michigan. Have they been slow getting out of the gate against some of these inferior opponents? Yes, absolutely. But now that Big Ten play is starting, do they kind of get spruced up a little bit? Do they get a little bit more jacked? Do they get a little bit more excited? And they end up playing a little bit better. I've seen teams kind of play like that in the past where when you play these inferior games out of conference against G5 or even FCS teams, it wasn't FCS in this case, for Michigan, I've seen them kind of come out and do you call it sluggish? Whatever you call it, kind of come out and they don't maybe perform like we all expected them to against these teams. And then when you get into conference play and then when you get into more of these juiced up matchups, then they really get going out of the gate. Then they really see the green flag and then they really get going in this offense. I really like what Rutgers has been this season. Right now, they appear to be a bowl team, but Michigan is just too strong. They're just too strong, and they're just too good of a football team. Michigan, show the country, show college football just how strong you are this week. What do you guys think of this matchup? Do you think Rutgers can hang around with Michigan? Do you think this is going to be a challenge for the Wolverines? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.